For the most part, influencer marketing is seen as a brand awareness function. We want people to be aware that we exist, and we're going to do that through influential voices online. All the programs that I've built have always been performance driven. So it's been that plus how many people within my audience will actually go through to purchase.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Creator Partnerships Podcast, where we try to tell you all of the secrets of the smartest people in the space, so you don't have to go dodging bullets in your mission to start and scale your creator partnerships. And today we have someone who's looked around those corners, who's hit those obstacles and overcome them more times than once. Dmitri Cherner of Ruggable fame, and Zephyr before that, but I think Ruggable is where you really cut your teeth as director of influencer and partnerships. Then 2 different head of influencer marketing stints at Quince and OneSkin. And your specialty really, as I understand, is the super performance, the scale up version of influencer partnerships. So less impressions, more conversions, more partnerships, more scale, team structures, and so on. So I'm really excited to jump in. Thanks for making the time. Yeah, nice to meet you, man. Thanks for being here. Do you want to do yourself a better intro than I did?
That was pretty good. I appreciate
Nice.
it. Yeah, nice to meet you too. I'm excited to be here, and I've been in the influencer space for 10 years. I was at the agency doing the agency thing for the first 5, 6. Um, really cutting my teeth, learning making a lot of mistakes at a multi-channel network, trying to do influencer deals in 2014, 2015 when people were like, this is a fad, this will be gone in like 2 years. And then going over to Zephyr, where we were doing big campaigns with Coca-Cola and Wendy's and Walmart and Samsung. So really good experience there. And then, ever since then, it's been brand side, building from the ground up, everything performance based. So, having a directly attributable ROI and revenue being kind of the main goals for the program. So it's been challenging, but it's been fun. And yeah.
Nice. Gotta love it. I think if you go look at any of the companies that Dimitri's been at, then you'll quickly see kind of the level of quality that those brands demand. So I think lots to learn from today. You ready for 3 warm-up questions?
Sure, let's do
Rapid
it.
fire?
Yeah.
All right. The first one is, what one thing do you wish more people knew about influencer marketing?
Um, it is not an automated channel. It is a relationship driven, um, non-transactional channel if it's done right. I think there's a lot of people who, and coming directly from my experience of like being the first specific influencer hire at these brands that wants to build a program, or is tasked with building a program. um, they kind of go, all right, so what can you do, and then how can you scale it? And I ultimately always say, like, I can scale it as soon as I'm talking to like 40 people at the same time, because like that's when conversations fall through the cracks and I can't remember who's delivering what. And you can get a platform to help you streamline those things, and you should. But ultimately, like, because every influencer is different, their content is different, their rates are different, their reach and engagement is different. Like, the moment you do outreach and they respond, it requires someone actually looking at that and saying, like, okay, cool, so here's what makes sense for you, and here's how much budget we have, and whatever. And um, yeah, it requires people to scale.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that's unique amongst every creator that you didn't mention is personality too. You're adapting in the same way as a sales team adapts to every lead, a partnerships lead reacts to every potential partner. So very
Absolutely.
well stated. I love it.
Yeah.
The next question in our rapid fire: What's one of your favorite collaborations that you've done? Is there one that stands out to you, like somebody who you felt like was either a really cool experience for you or just went above and beyond or the results were amazing? What's the partnership that stands out to you?
We did a collab at Ruggable with a this woman. She owns a home cleaning business, but she over the course of the pandemic, her channel kind of exploded. It's at Go Clean Co. And you just get kind of like home cleaning tips and facts and ways to like really kind of do the best job of cleaning your own home. And I think at this point there's an entire like there's a clean talk now where this is really popular and like super ASMR type of like satisfying videos to watch. But she was on the very early end of that, and just has like this rabid, super loyal audience. And so we partnered with her, and even while we were negotiating terms of like the deliverables and the length and all of that good stuff, we had sent her product, and she had just organically shared it and mentioned it. And I just like
No.
created a code for her like immediately. Here's your code. Sent that off, and then she shared the code too, and drove like $90,000 in one day, and like that's for a rug, that's crazy. We had never seen anyone sell more than like $2,000 at that time. Because the average order value of a machine washable rug, and like their prices have gone up since then, but like it was like $240. It's not a product that you're just like, oh great, like 10% off, I'm gonna go buy it. Like there's a whole internet searching process for rugs. But again, because she's cleaning all the time, this is a machine washable rug, she's an expert, she's got this big loyal audience, like it worked like gangbusters. And then we just expanded the relationship out from there, and we ended up flying out. She was in Canada too, but I can't remember where. I think it was
Ooh.
outside of Toronto. And
Oh, nice.
yeah, ended up
Real
flying out to
Canada.
her place and and did a whole production, and ran that on. I think we ran it not just on paid, but also like streaming services too, as a TV streaming. So it was really cool just to kind of see the partnership go from being really successful on a performance standpoint to broadly successful across multiple kind of channels. So yeah, proud of that one.
Totally crazy. Wait, so I think I have to derail us already. I'm too excited. So you have the nature of her posting the first time was just like you were in outreach and she just like happened to post something. It
We
wasn't
had
contracted that she would publish, or it was.
It wasn't contracted. I just sent her product. I sent her a rug because we knew that we wanted to partner with her, and we were already in negotiation. But she just received it and was like, "I am so excited to test this out. It's a machine washable rug, you guys." Like da da da. Um, and
Nice.
and again, it's going back to the performance side of things. Only once I sent her the code did we have any idea of her actual like capacity to sell
Oh
the
yeah, so you were
product.
on the other side of the reach probably already. She'd like probably missed a big chunk of attribution as well.
Yeah, well, like just the way her
Yeah.
audience is, every single one of them watches all of her stories. So I was like, oh shoot, we missed it. But if she could just create one more frame and include a discount code, then we could know. And then yeah, she drove that amount, and I was like, it allowed the negotiations to immediately go forward. So I was like, okay, I don't care if you charge $20,000 for stories. You just made us $90,000, so we're going forward. Um, and
Absolutely
yeah, just
crazy. Okay, so you had a creator in the outreach process serendipitously post about the product, drive 90,000 in revenue, which is like 500 orders if my math is about right on your average checkout without even being contracted, and that's not even the whole picture because there was a bunch of delivery before that. That's so insane. And you said that it did well on streaming services. Can you unpack that? Like what was the nature of the were you involved in that piece? Like, what? I've never heard of such a thing.
So it's because our production team actually went out there and like worked with her to develop a
Yeah.
scripted concept video. We got members of her team so that like we got this cool B-roll of her like having a meeting and then like cleaning a home and then obviously like washing a rug. But over the course of that production and then seeing it go live, it's just when you think of influencer programs, very few influencer partnerships actually get to that point where you incorporate other teams, like a production team, to be like, hey, like she is such a good representative of the brand that we want to do something really big with her. Um, and you know, because like Ruggable is a direct consumer startup. We're not running TV commercials, so there's not that much opportunity outside of paid social to actually like
Hmm.
drive impressions and drive brand awareness for brand recognition via her likeness. But that was one of them. So it was cool. It was just cool to see
It's
because
so
like
cool.
up to that point, you never really leave social. You're just like on social and then paid social, and then that's kind of it. Maybe they have a blog or something, but not your on and
Yeah,
off
it's so
road.
cool. And I feel like it's such a cool example of how, you kind of stated as if it's for you, you've done this before, but for me it's so beautiful to see like this how you implement the workflow. You take a performance approach on average, that's what you're aiming at. You build out these relationships, like you said, you invest in them, and sometimes you hit roadblocks and you get a headache and you wish it was click boost post on Facebook, but it's just not. And you keep going, and then occasionally, I mean, the channel works on its own, but it's hard work. And then occasionally you get this like awesome moment that's just somehow not possible in many other channels. Really, it's really cool. So you built, yeah. They say luck is what's the saying? You have to create your own luck. So I think that's exactly what you did in this case.
Yeah,
It's
the
very
the
cool.
ones who it's not a saying, but I my experience is the harder you work, the luckier you are. It's like that's how partnerships goes. Is
Nice.
like the more partnerships you do, eventually one will hit, and you learn from each different partnership how to better manage the future partnerships. So yeah, I agree. Like that's the most exciting thing about partnerships is like one, obviously it's super relationship driven. I like interacting with people and building relationships and all that good stuff, but they can surprise you too, and then you don't really necessarily know where it's going to go when you first have that conversation, but to see something come all the way to fruition and have it be really successful is just the icing on the cake.
Yeah, dude. The harder you work, the luckier you are. That's badass. I'm gonna go get a tattoo after the show. Very cool.
Oh, let me show you my. No, I'm just kidding.
Nice. Yeah, you're like, wait, I got a full back tat
Yeah.
here. Yeah. But very cool. Okay, the last of our three quick questions. I had to go deeper on that one because it was just too cool of a story. But do you personally have a favorite creator? Somebody you find yourself binging in the evenings, something like that? Somebody you.
I uh the person that comes to mind is Phil DeFranco, who's like super
Hell
OG
yeah.
YouTuber.
The OG of the OG,
I
dude.
know, yeah.
Yeah.
Like I really kind of discovered who he was probably back in like 2018, and I've probably missed like 30 total shows of his since then. Like I just feel like he is um I just appreciate his perspective on things. It's very just like realistic. It's very to the point. And he is kind of what you want with when you think of not just a content creator but an influencer. Like he everything is driven by his community. He never like got away from that. Every single story he ends with like, what are your thoughts? Let's read the comments down below. Like, it's very interactive that way. And so he is still very much trying to have a two-way conversation with his audience, which is where influencer marketing started and not where it necessarily is
Yeah.
anymore. And so I appreciate that.
Yeah, Philly D is He's one of my personal favorites as well. I haven't watched in a long time, to be honest, but I grew up watching Philip DeFranco, and I think he was one of the first signals for me that creators would eat everything, because he's like sitting on his bed or whatever in the early days doing these little news shows, and I just remember thinking like, this is it. Like, there's no way that it's better to watch this on TV from some person who is the old format is just dead, and it's Philly D is the future. And I think in a lot of ways that's what happened. It was like Philip DeFranco and maybe the Young Turks on YouTube in the early days doing news, and
Right. Yep.
um, super cool to see how now, I guess, even the legacy news media is kind of trying to be YouTubers at this point. So
Yeah. And the
it's
pandemic
it's
changed
been really cool
everything
to see.
too. So like suddenly you had
Yeah.
those legacy news outlets reporting from like a hotel room or like their study
Yeah.
or whatever. And
Right.
it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, things have really blended here.
The basement of their house. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Um, well, that was a lovely warm up. Let's dive right into the news. Um, Topic number one is the purpose of influencer marketing. What do you think, maybe across the brands you've worked at, especially maybe your more recent or the experiences you think are most relevant here? Take your pick. What do you think is kind of the function of influencer marketing, or what should it be, um, versus how it's maybe seen at a glance?
Yeah, I think for the most part, influencer marketing is seen as a brand awareness function. It's a top of funnel. Like we want people to be aware that we exist, and we're going to do that through influential voices online, the most relevant influential voices if they're doing it right. Um, that said, all the programs that I've built have always been performance driven. So like it's been that plus how many people within my audience will actually go through to purchase. And I think influencer can certainly be a performance channel. There's things that have happened over the last 18 months that make me think less so now than it was 3 years ago. Uh, but that's if you're looking at it as this very direct sideload thing, which is how I've structured a lot of my programs. Just like each influencer has a discount code, they have a trackable link or a commission affiliate link, and all the sales that they drive compared to how much you spend on that partnership is your ROI. But that obviously doesn't include the brand awareness aspect of it. Doesn't include the content if you're licensing and running that in paid ads. It doesn't include the and again like this is kind of if you're looking at partnerships really holistically, which I try to do. I mean, it's very easy to fall in this transactional element of like, all right, how much for this, and then we do that, and da 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 da. But I try to like strategic introductions. I think is really cool. Where if you have a good relationship with somebody, they're driving value for the brand, and you're like, you got any friends? Who else amongst your like influential friends would love this product also? Because you probably have overlapping audiences, right?
Mm,
And there's always that idea of like, needing to see it's an old marketing thing of like, you have to see a product like 6 times or something to actually remember it. And so for that reason, a lot of influencer partnerships at this point are tougher to see performance out of because everyone's kind of looking at it as like, well, what's the performance influencer channel driving instead of how is it impacting other channels and driving our brand forward and all these other things because it's really difficult to measure. So um,
yeah.
if that's I'll say this just in summary, like it can be a performance channel. Don't do it in a silo. Find a way to connect the dots between an influencer talking about a product and how that increases your retargeting pool for paid social, or what the earned media value is of all the combined influencer posts, or whether your influencer as a selection on your post purchase survey starts to increase. Just like it's just really difficult, especially for a product pretty much above $50. Like you're very rarely going to get people who are like, yep, I'm going to go through all the way to purchase and not make any detours along the way. It's like so impossibly difficult. So yeah, I think it, that's how it should be done. Is kind of like really look at it as an omni-channel thing, look at it really holistically, and
Do you
do your
think like
best to
the
do it
evolution
yourself.
of that maybe for the medium size, let's say, like not the Nikes, but the medium sized companies who are ready to take this seriously, do you think that the evolution is kind of start from performance, measure it well, with the knowledge that there's kind of second order benefits, and then slowly over time try to measure and then maybe bolster those second order benefits? Is this kind of like the maturity arc that you take? It's like we start very performance oriented, over time we learn how it impacts us positively across the business, and then we start to measure that impact and maybe even do more to enhance it. Is that like you think that's the optimal way, or is there a better way to think about it?
So it's really funny you asked me that. They a year ago, I would have said yes. That's how you do it. You set it up through the lens of performance. Every partnership gets put through the lens of how many sales are they driving? Is that the main core value that they provide? And if not, maybe they have additional value elsewhere, but unlikely that the partnership will
Hmm.
go forward from there. I, for the most part, have flipped that theory now. Like just based off my experience, if you go that route, 98% of the time, you won't have anybody else to work with because nobody's hitting those performance targets anymore. And
Mm.
performance target being just a positive ROI. Like it's just very, very difficult based off how rates have climbed in the last 18 months and how performance has dropped that you're seeing really positive ROI on any given partnership based off a first touch point to their audience and actually driving sales. Discount codes are plenty. It's really easy to find those. So that's not enough of an incentive. And then I think more broadly, influencer fatigue has kind of set in where it's people are like, I'm tired of you kind of always recommending products to me. Now there is this class of influencer where every post that they do is like the latest Amazon thing for your kitchen or like the latest TikTok thing that you have to get. It makes my life so easy, whatever.
Yeah.
And then there's everybody else who's just creating content and just trying to do brand deals and drive brand awareness. And so um, I would say now you need to revert back to a much more authentic approach. Try to do start with seeding and see who actually talks about you
Mm.
organically, and then from there spend your money on the people who are genuinely obsessed with you, and will talk about you
Mm.
for free because um, that's who will drive the most value for your brand. That and like people within your
Absolutely.
existing community. If you are doing social listening well, um, that will identify a core community for you, and it will help you identify influencers that you can start working with and give you the kind of um, I'm forgetting the word, but basically like the North Star of other influencers that
Mm.
you'll want to partner with. The model.
A benchmark, kind of.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Gotcha. Nice. Yeah, it's funny. As you were talking in the beginning, I was thinking that, and I think you kind of insinuated this. I think you could be right that over time, of course, like unless the pool of creators grows exponentially, like this, I think the demand side at this point, the brands who want to be partnered with creators is outpacing the number of creators that exist, which is great, because those teams become more sophisticated and there's more investment, and the creators can make more, which is really cool. I think they deserve that. I do think, though, you're right. I think that and some algorithmic changes and some attribution changes means that there's only two antidotes that I see over time. I think lots of brands, for most brands, by the way, creators can be a meaningful channel for you on a performance basis. There's
Mm.
like a certain level of scale that you need to require, I think, for it to start to break. So I'm still convinced that it works today. We still see lots of teams that it works for. But I see the trend that you're talking about. And I think the antidotes are great content, which I think you hinted at authenticity, which is like, it sounds very fluffy, but the nature of the algorithms on social themselves are demanding that you publish great content, because it doesn't like, it matters much more whether somebody whether the algorithm favors the content than it does, for example, how many followers the creator has.
Sure.
We have one partner who has like tens of thousands of followers only. But we found an angle in creative where he can deliver like tens of millions of views. It's insane, and we just repeat this cycle over and over again. And so I think content is a big one. Surfshark that we talked to, it was a really great example of that. We did a whole episode with Surfshark and content, really nailing the content piece.
Mm.
And the other one I think is, which you also alluded to a bit, is that the attribution tooling has to get better. I think we have to get better at measuring it. I think before, the brands just, maybe it's a zero interest rate phenomenon, a little ZERP phenomenon, was like the brand seemingly didn't even care that much about like really attributing those dollars. And now everybody really wants to know where those dollars go. So I think the tooling needs to catch up to those new expectations too. And I think I have a feeling that will happen. I got an inside scoop that's going to happen pretty soon.
I
But
hope so.
yeah,
What I'm seeing is basically everyone just going to affiliate as being the only kind of meaningful antidote here.
antidote.
Yeah, for kind of just saying like, look, I can't. It doesn't make sense for me as a brand to pay you $4,000 for an Instagram reel, right? So how about
Yeah,
we agree on a lower fee and you have ownership of this? Like if we sell, you can make more. We're both incentivized
yeah,
to make that happen. So the challenge there is like, I mean, I've talked to creators who I'm like, hey, I can give you a commission link as well. And they're like, no, I'm good. It's like, oh, you're not going to drive a
yeah,
single sale. Like you have no interest in
yeah.
even potentially earning more. It's like, okay, guess not.
Yeah. Um, yeah, absolutely. I think there might be hope too in the creator expectation shifting. I'm not sure. I'm sure there's like some PhD researcher who's like infinitely smarter than me that could answer this question. But to me, it feels like there might be some sort of marketplace law or dynamic where like the supply side lags the like the demand side sets the terms over a long period of time. And so that means that the supply side, the creators, take longer to catch up to the brand. So more, because competition has to cool off in order for supply to adapt to new realities. And so I think that we might see in a year that the brands have, they've set the prices so strictly now that the creators kind of realize that the average price has come down, and then maybe things start to find some sort of equilibrium. Because if everybody is paying less, then the market rate just changes. So I'm also hopeful that maybe creator expectations will adapt a little bit over time. Um, I'm,
I hope. I've been honestly waiting for that
yeah,
for years. Like I really
you
thought
think?
there
Yeah.
would be a more standardized payment model um, years ago, just based off of like YouTubers um, and their average views and measuring out like what it would cost to run TrueView ads through a CPM. Like
Mm,
I would make that case, and managers and agents would be like, well, that doesn't include the cost of like creating the content and production, whatever, and using their likeness or whatever. And like, yes, that's all true, but our CMO doesn't care. She's just gonna be like,
yeah, yeah.
he or she is gonna be like, yeah, no, that's fine, but I'm not paying a $90 CPM when I could just run ads
Mm-hmm.
with other content or whatever. And so there's hopefully there is some kind of standardization, but it's hard to imagine at this point
Yeah,
because yeah, there's when you're working with talent, it just depends on the whatever, like art, right? It's whatever people are willing to pay. So if you set a rate and someone pays
absolutely.
it, guess what? That's your new rate. Now you're 10 grand for a
Th-
video. and
Yeah,
everybody else has to pay that.
it's hard to go backwards.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Um, yeah, I that's it's interesting. I hope I have faith. I still see companies figuring out weird stuff. I'm also you're also in the US, which maybe I've seen a lot of European companies, so I think that the dynamic is always like 5 years. You're always 5 years ahead of schedule or something in the US compared to Europe in my experience. So I think the reality on the ground there is probably more intense. Very cool. Well, I want to hear more about this second order impacts of, or I think you described them as cross functional benefits of influencer marketing. Um, any kind of anything in particular you think that people should look out for, or unexpected surprises, or yeah, tell us about those second order effects a little bit more.
Yeah. So I actually wouldn't refer to them as like second order. I would it's more so like how do they impact other marketing channels. So licensed content is the main one here, where it's like how much content are you getting, how are you using it, where are you using it, what is the performance of it, and then how is that helping to drive your content strategy. Because like I don't know, I think a lot of e-com brands that are running the bulk of their acquisition strategy on Meta and TikTok and YouTube and Google, as they most likely are, um, influencer content outperforms everything on all of those channels, right? So if you're talking about a content strategy, it shouldn't be what is our production team planning to create and what photo shoots and video shoots do we have planned. It should be what are influencers creating, what are the angles they're taking, and how should we creatively um, segment and test and develop uh, the content strategy through that lens. And so I don't know. I think there's, again, it's one of these things that like influencer often is in a silo and it's just like, oh, great, we get more influencer content. But that's like so backwards to me. Like, influencer should be the tip of the spear, where like, you're looking at influencers impacting the content you put out on the channels that you're spending the most on and that you're watching the most closely, being obviously like Meta largely, Google and TikTok. And again, like all of my experience has been direct to consumer e-commerce brands. So it's going to be different if you're like a legacy brand or a blue chip brand like
Hmm.
Nike or whatever. But like, even still, Lululemon just created an ad with Casey Neistat, and it runs it every weekend on Sunday during football games. So like, um, I don't know. I just think that like if you're not looking at how influencer content is driving the brand and the content strategy forward in a really major way, then you're missing. Um, and then the other thing,
Any
a
ideas how
couple.
people can? Oh, sorry to cut you off. Little
Oh no,
lag. Go ahead.
please.
Sorry.
The
I was going to ask any way you think people can accomplish this?
put influencer at the forefront of your strategies, pretty much. Like I
Okay.
think, when as like the detailed way is, through your acquisition strategies, whether through an agency or in house, separate the UGC from the branded content, and then test them in different ad sets, and then create your all-star group and test them against each other. 90% of the time, the influencer content will win out, and then replicate similar influencer content to what's working there, and then use it as a testing ground. And there's, I should actually specify that. Excuse me. There's influencers and then there's content creators. Like it used to be one thing where I could work with an influencer and then take their content, use it as an ad. But for the most part now, that doesn't work as well. So like influencers need to be really organic to their channels and their audiences. But then you have this whole industry that's cropped up of content creators, UGC creators that are like, I have no following, but I'm good on camera and I can, unbox your product and you give me the hooks and I can say them really well and convincingly and it'll cost $200 and you can scale that to, 10 grand a day and spend. And so like there's, I actually look at them as two separate strategies within the same umbrella.
Totally. Yeah. The UGC thing is eating everything. It's super interesting to see. It's like suddenly I blinked and there's like a million UGC people publishing on every platform about how to do UGC or how they do UGC, or it's really, really interesting space. And I'm not sure, like, do you have a feeling for the work? Okay. You described it pretty articulately, actually. I guess I'm just curious. I guess for an entry level, for a more mid market company with a less sophisticated workflow, maybe just getting into their, they've got a couple people in their influencer team. I guess the flow is really just like make sure you have rights to the content, and then collaborate, like work closely with the team working on paid to test that content in paid. And anything on from the creative management perspective, like going into these activations, you've found a great partner, you hit them up, you gave them some free product, you've contracted them for a post. Anything on the management of creative to make sure the content will actually translate to paid? Does my question make sense?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. So that's actually a good point that I didn't go into detail on. For the most part, a lot of the programs that I develop are evergreen. So like I try to
Yeah.
find one or two or three creative concepts that can apply to most of the influencers within the categories that I'm testing. And so the content kind of becomes on purpose, kind of becomes like one of three things. It's, like at Ruggable, it was telling on a story about why a machine washable rug would make a difference in yours and your family's lives. And so to an interior designer, that was like, it allows me to really like make this space my own. Or to a mom, it was like, I have kids and a dumb husband that spills all the time. And like, boom, that's the story. And so like that you kind of saw this linear thread that was both brand building but highly effective and still allow them to be speaking organically to their audiences. With when it comes to paid, it needs to be a lot more guided. And so we
Mm.
usually do a structure of like, here's a list of five hooks, pick three. Here's a list of 10 talking points, aka like reasons why I love or reasons why I use. Pick five. And then we need X amount of B-roll, and here's four examples of B-roll that we typically use or ask for, and then a list of creative examples down at the bottom. It's a pretty formatted brief of this is going to be for an ad, right? So like let's just get exactly
Yeah.
what we want and not worry about it seeming organic. And that's why these groups of creators and these two strategies have split a lot more significantly because like the formulaic approach to running ads is through user generated content just based off like years of doing it. At this point we know what it is. It's the
Yeah.
hook. We're like, you won't believe what that. And then it's them in their living room doing yoga or whatever, or like walking their dog, and then more B-roll, and then some kind of offer at the end. And so it's not your typical influencer content anymore. It's kind of just like organic testimonials, and then run them.
Absolutely love it. Look at that. We snuck in a crash course on UGC in the middle of the episode, totally unplanned. We're professionals, Dimitri. I think we're doing a good job here. Let's move into building influencer marketing teams. Um,
Mm.
you, of all the folks we've had on the show, I think have kind of probably structured the most workflows, seen the most kind of multifaceted functions. Most people have had one or two successes that we've had on the show, but you seem to have a different angle on team structure, I think, than some of the other folks we've had. So I'm excited to learn. What do you think is kind of or what should be the standard structure of a, let's call it, mature influencer function? kind of from the number of people you would expect to see and their roles and responsibilities?
Yeah. So I think I'll just kind of give the example of my team at Ruggable. I manage a team of 7, and the way it was set up was from a really high level. We had our testing group, meaning we've never worked with these influencers before. We don't know what to expect, but they're aligned with our values. They create content we're interested in. They're within our kind of core verticals, but also like our new testing and adjacent verticals. So I had mentioned um, in a recent survey that, like, as part of your strategy, you should be identifying your core, which again, for the example of Ruggable, was like moms, interior designers, pets, and lifestyle people. These are 4 kind of core categories that where a machine washable rug would be hyper relevant to them. And then over the course of time, as we tested those categories and learned what worked and what didn't, we then started spreading outwards. So then we were testing fitness, like could you use the rug as a yoga mat? Again, because if you sweat on it, you can just wash it, no big deal. Cooking, could this rug be good for a kitchen for splatters and spills? Yes, it could. Um, and like beauty, like all these different kind of unique angles where we started to differentiate and expand the people we're working with, but all falling within the testing category. And then we had a checklist of sorts that was kind of grading the performance. So I mentioned that, like, up until basically a year ago, the structure was everyone gets put through the lens of performance. How did they perform? Did they actually drive any sales? Did they drive sales at a positive ROI? And what, like, how did they talk about the brand and product? Were they on point? Were they really engaged and enthusiastic, or did it feel like they were kind of phoning it in, which you run into plenty? And so um, then it got handed over to an ambassador team, and that was people that we have worked with that provided value in some capacity. And I created kind of like a 4-lane highway for this, which was performance, meaning you drove sales, let's keep working with you to continue driving sales. um, Content, which was you didn't necessarily drive sales, but we loved the content you created, so let's put you in our content bucket, like our content program, where we make more specific requests for content creation with you. And in Ruggable's case, like, they had a beautiful home, and we're like, we want to see rugs in your bathroom, in your bedroom, in your entryway, like, like the more places we could put our product, and have you create beautiful content with it, the better. um, and then there was our awareness ambassadors, so people who had a high reach at a relatively low cost, and they became our, like, I call them splash campaigns, but essentially like tentpole, seasonal, big promo, Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Like, they're just getting the word out to a large group of people, at a relatively low cost. And then there was the affiliates, and these are people who, like, didn't necessarily drive great performance, didn't drive, their content wasn't amazing, they didn't have a large audience, but they love the brand, and so we want to maintain a relationship with them and provide them opportunities to continue talking about us. And so that was kind of low effort, low lift, you know maintenance, and allowing them to earn, and still kind of provide value for the brand and for themselves. So the structure was testing an ambassador, and then I actually eventually moved 2 people over to content entirely. So we developed an entirely new influencer production program, is what we called it, and that
Sounds fancy.
became, yeah. Is not. It became 2 full-time people that were, again, like, not just working with creators to try to drive more content or whatever, but like working with them on upcoming launches, generating like storyboards and like basically like a hybrid between an influencer team and a production team, where they were taking the production elements of knowing exactly what we wanted and knowing what we wanted to shoot and how we wanted to shoot and what angles we wanted to get, but using influencers as the producers. So
Hmm.
that worked really, really well. I believe that program still exists there. And Yeah, so it broke out as two people on the testing side, two people on the ambassador side, two people on the content side. Um, oh, and then I also oversaw social, so then one social media manager who was doing
Got
this
you.
social media stuff and crushing it.
Okay, so so you're running like a pretty sophisticated function here. Can you say maybe simultaneously how many relationships, if you had to guess, where you were managing at one time between testing, ambassador, and those content functions, like um, between the six of you?
Yeah, so they were probably testing out between 15 to 30 testing partnerships per week. And then a lot
Wow.
of the ambassadors were rolling on a month to month basis. So, over time that grew to dozens and then into the hundreds. Um, but was, for each kind of concurrent conversation, it was more of a like monthly touch base on what we're going to do for the upcoming month. So, um, not actively in negotiation all the time. Whereas the testing group was like active negotiation all the time, like all new people, new stats to consider, all that stuff. So yeah, it was in the 50 to 150 ish range on a weekly or biweekly basis. Oh yeah, and then the content team was probably doing like it was smaller scale because it was more specific.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like probably between 10 and 20 per campaign. There was about a campaign per month.
Nice. So really, you're doing like with a you get the SEAL Team Six of influencer marketing over here. You get six people managing like hundreds of relationships. I mean, I know that you said with ambassadors, for example, it's like yeah, it's one touch point per month maybe, but hundreds of those. Then you're doing tons of testing. Someone's always sick or on holiday. You guys were a well-oiled machine over there. Very cool to see. Um, Nice. And do you think that was optimal? Is there something more you would have liked to see? Like in an ideal world, would you have, unlimited money, unlimited people? How might you structure it out to be as optimal, depending on what you think that means,
Yeah, we
as
were we
possible?
were we were missing a community manager. We had brought
Mm,
someone on at one point, but just didn't really work out. And so I think the community manager for the aspect of social listening and engaging with these posts, so that it's not on the people who are like negotiating these things and like trying to get partnerships live to also be in social
yeah.
and following up and doing all that. So like community manager for sure. And then I also think as far as social goes, 2022 was probably the last year that you could have one person running multiple channels and doing it decently well. Like
Mm,
I think in an ideal world, you have a person per channel, and really Instagram and TikTok being like the core, like the most important channels. Um, but social, I think, requires that if you're doing it well. And then I wouldn't change much about the structure that I had apart from what I had mentioned previously about like everyone being put through the lens of performance first. I think basically the performance testing team would become largely a seeding and initial partnership team. So I would ramp up seeding in like
hmm.
a really significant way. Um, and then again, implement social listening so that we're getting a good understanding of who's actually talking about us, and how are they talking about us, and how can we turn that into a partnership going forward. and then everything else will probably stay the same. And then, as I mentioned, it's just like it's more as you scale up the number of conversations and partnerships, you just need to add more headcount. Like it just cannot be automated, um, because every conversation is so
Totally
unique.
agree.
Yeah.
Love it. You've given a fantastic prescription, the guide to building an influencer marketing team. But who are these people? What do we actually need to see in them? Are some people take the approach of hiring like straight out of uni entry level folks. Others I see kind of try to find someone who's more senior in an adjacent channel, maybe in PR or branding, and pull them through into this world. Or maybe they did affiliate marketing in the past. What's your strategy for hiring great people to an influencer team?
Yeah. I like to hire um I like to hire top down for the most part. Actually, that's not true. I like to hire kind of bottom up. So I say top down because I think every channel lead needs to be hired first. Like I disagree with, we don't have someone who's developing a long-term strategy for influencer, but we have a couple interns who are seeding. Like I don't agree with that strategy. I think you need someone
Mm-hmm.
who can set the strategy, and then that person needs
Totally.
support. But you don't need somebody with 7 years of experience to do a bunch of outreach negotiation. Like I wouldn't say straight out of uni. Like I would say probably a couple years experience, coordinator level, that has run some negotiations before and done some collabs and has cut their teeth a little bit. But like though that's where I get the most excited is that kind of level of experience, because um, they know what they're doing, so you don't have to hold their hand, but they also have so much to learn when developing strategy and thinking through structure and operations and workflow, and like that's the stuff that in my brain kind of comes the most naturally. So as a leader, I can kind of explain to them like, all right, so this is how you do things. You already know how to do things on an execution level. Like you're doing this, then you do this, then you do this, then you do this. But why do we do it that way? Is that the best way to do it?
Mm-hmm.
How do we incorporate multiple channels, like every other marketing channel, but also like that 4-lane highway I mentioned, where it's like, performance partnerships and content partnerships and awareness partnerships and affiliate partnerships, and some are overlapping, some are totally separate. Like, how do you manage all of that, and how do you do it effectively? I get excited about training people on just thinking through those things, because I don't have all the answers, and every brand is different, and every operational strategy is different according to what you're trying to accomplish and what you're selling, like what the product is or service. I really like that, where it's like you kind of build a team of coordinators who also have the opportunity to grow into managers and become team leads. But the way I had it done at
Yeah.
Ruggable was like a manager and a coordinator, a manager, a coordinator, a manager, and a coordinator, so that that manager could set their own strategy, could own the testing vertical, could own the ambassador vertical, and then they also had a coordinator support them in actually scaling.
Absolutely love it. I think I would do it exactly the same as far as how you described. For what that's worth, I mean, you're the expert here. I'm just some dude on the end of a microphone. But I think I really love the idea of um, both pieces. One, that the function needs a manager. I often see like the CMO, as you said, hire an intern or hire a couple of interns and say like go do influencer marketing or something. It's like it's actually relatively complex for people to figure out the nature of building those relationships, which has been a theme in the show. I think that it's not it takes some time, or some sort of like either intrinsic skill or experience to really be great at adding new relationships consistently, managing them, keeping them on the rails.
Mhm.
And I completely agree with your notion that I think it's a great career accelerating function for a marketer. I mean, it's kind of hard to, you can get really good at paid, but if you get really good at the influencer thing, you have a really broad context of how social works, how building those relationships looks with any type of partner, which is key to like half of the functions of any company at least. And then you have this whole world of attribution that you're going to be impacted by. It's a really great role, actually. I think for someone who, exactly as you said, has a couple of years experience, can do the execution level tasks without a lot of hand holding, and wants to kind of push themselves a little bit further. I
Yeah.
think completely agree with that.
Yeah, and content
Uh,
strategy and production too. Like every brand, no matter who they are, needs to develop content. And again, if the content's going to be for social, it's influencer content, or UGC. Like, and any startup, that's where they're going to go. If you're walking into Nike, they got agencies and they got production teams, and that's fine. That's great. But it's going to be tough to get a job at Nike with 1 or 2 years experience. So, gain the experience, figure out what you like doing, and ideally, you're in a place that still allows you the flexibility to go in one direction or the other. If you're like, I am obsessed with influencer partnerships, I want to be a master negotiator, and like drive these partnerships forward, you can do that. Or if you're like, I'm really interested in the acquisition side and understanding more about how this content performs in paid media and how they're testing paid media, and like that can drive you into an acquisition um, kind of role. So I agree. Yeah, like there's a ton of flexibility and some really cool options when you go into influencer marketing.
Nice. All right, we're pressing past an hour together here. I would spend 4, but I'm sure you have other things to do. So let's burn through these last two topics. One very specific that you've mentioned a couple times in the show thus far is this moving through adjacent niches. This is a really standout piece of advice that I heard from Bitpanda originally on the show, who talked about how everyone, it's a crypto exchange, everyone in crypto was partnering the crypto YouTubers. It was super saturated. Nobody trusted anybody. The prices were super inflated. And so Bitpanda said, hey, you know what? We actually would like to expand this market, and they eventually learned that like female entrepreneurs were a fantastic niche for them, because they're kind of trusted and had these engaged audiences of people interested in those topics, and totally fresh to that idea of crypto and that kind of thing, which I thought was a really, really cool example of this. But I'd love to hear more from maybe from your experience at Ruggable or otherwise. How do you think about testing a niche, moving through a niche? How do you know that it has or hasn't worked? Yeah, if you're a marketer you at a brand and you need to move through niches, how does it look?
Yeah, yeah. So you use the existing brand insights to identify your core verticals, and I would recommend starting with at least two or three. Because if you just focus on one, it's gonna be all or nothing. And so I made this mistake recently where I was kind of like, did this at OneSkin, where OneSkin is a biotech company, that whose product is a skincare moisturizer slash supplement. And so their existing audience was like super um, longevity, like biohackers, optimization type of specialists. And my assumption was I'm going to break us out of there. Like I'm going to go right for a broad lifestyle category where it's adjacent to beauty, but it isn't beauty and skincare because that is so saturated. Like what I learned was like every beauty brand is just hoping to become one of like an entire skincare routine mention, and like they just hope for a lot of those. And I was like, no, 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 I want dedicated stuff, right? So I'm going to work with lifestyle influencers to try to drive that forward. And we just didn't see the performance that we were hoping to see. I think we drove a ton of really fantastic brand awareness and we got some really good content, but we weren't getting quite the right performance. So we kind of actually reverted back to our core that way. But at another example is at Ruggable, like again, what makes the most sense for influencers to talk about a machine washable rug. Like it's moms because they have messy kids. It's interior designers because they're curating spaces. It's pets because they're cute and they make messes on rugs. And we also did lifestyle as general, like somebody who's just creating content within the home and sharing their lives. And it's a cross between all of those things. Um, Kind of interesting. The pets category failed miserably. Again, everything was put through a performance lens. And I think that ultimately to this day, my main assumption is like, it's just an entertainment channel. Like people who follow the really cute pet
Mm,
accounts don't want to be sold to. They're just there to see that Frenchie do a backflip and like it's cute and they love it. And
yeah.
that's it. The other ones did really, really well. So we stopped testing the pets vertical. I usually say like get to get to a minimum of 50 partnerships before you give up on a vertical. That gives you a good like statistical significance of whether it makes sense to keep testing because you test 5, 10, or even 20 like there could be unique nuances to those channels or audiences that for some reason just didn't work. But I think 50 is a good number. And again, this is through the lens of performance and through the lens of like you're investing in an influencer channel, so you have the budget and time and resources to test 50 before giving up and going to another. But you're also testing them concurrently. So once we were doing that and we felt like okay, lifestyle moms, interior designers all worked for us. And we were like, getting into the hundreds of partnerships with them. That's when we were like, all right, so it's time to expand here. And so we just kind of thought creatively about what was the next best audience to look at who felt like this would be the most value to them. Again, um, who could best convey our creative of testimonial driven, education driven, tell an honest story about why this machine washable rug makes a difference in yours and your family's lives. And so that I think I mentioned this, but like we went into fitness. We felt like, especially over the course of the pandemic, like people were working out at home. And so they were developing unique spaces. And how do you define a space with a rug? That's great. And then other places where you can get messy, like a bathroom or a mud room or an entryway or um, a kitchen, so chefs. And so we also did we did a travel vertical, which you would not think makes sense for rugs, but like there is a large group of people on social who are in an RV and like who camp year round.
Ah,
And we're like, oh, okay, like, let's put a washable rug in there. And so um, things that are creative but still ultimately make sense to test. And so that's kind of how we looked at the expand the expanding capabilities of the program at large. It's like it's not just sticking within one vertical and going deeper and deeper and deeper because the talent level eventually drops off. And so um, it's better to refresh and start looking at testing new creatives and creative angles through the lens of like different verticals.
love it. So you take some sort of core idea, some fundamental principle. I always think of it in my head as a story. You take like that one story, how Ruggable can bring an improvement to the life of you and your family, and then you embed that into a type of person or some identity you think could experience that. You work with 50 creators to test out whether you're right about that kind of story, identity, audience match. And if it doesn't work after 50, then you gladly move along. And if it does, then you double down, but you never stop testing new niches, new potential partners.
Yeah,
Very clear,
as much as your
very
resources
cool.
can allow.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Do you was there one in particular that shocked you or that you were really like, I don't know about these cat influencers, it's never going to work, but then really took off and crushed?
Um,
Or maybe not even took off, but were effective.
yeah, I'm trying to think. Um, so at OneSkin, we saw quite a bit of success with like functional medicine people. So again, like core category is skincare specialists or beauty or biohackers. And then adjacent verticals were people who were talking about scientific things or like stuff that was clinically validated and clinically proven. And so we were talking like we had an OBGYN who was a great ambassador for us. We had, um, yeah, like there was, I'm trying to remember another example. A neuroscientist was like, what
Huh.
does he have to
Nice.
do with a topical skincare supplement? But again, it's just like he had so much credibility. He knew what he was talking about. And he was like, I've dove deep into the science here, and like everything makes sense. This is totally legitimate. Like this is a really cool brand. It's a really cool product. I'm excited about it. Like, am I showing you my skincare routine? No, but like it's still something that you might be interested in because you love science, and so like connecting the dots between their audience that way, um, that I was surprised to see.
Love that one. Very, very cool. Yeah, it's very common, like maybe more so than you know, that companies will come to us, for example, looking for advice because they worked with some creators and it just didn't work out and they can't understand why and they can't find anybody else to work with. There's nobody else on earth that they could work with. And it's because they kind of start from this concept that the person that I work with needs to already be talking about the exact same thing that I sell, basically. And that
Yeah.
has to be like, it has, that piece has to be so dense. So it has to be such a huge percentage of what they do that, that I see it when I look at it, which is a huge problem, I think, because people way underestimate how many creators are out there that can tell those stories. And just because you sell lamps, we have this funny story internally. We call these people lamp influencer people because I once had a company that sells lamps come to me and say, Avery, your product sucks. You don't have any lamp influencers. And I was like, what is a lamp in what are you talking about? They're like, yeah, we can't find anybody who's like publishing about lamps all the time. I'm like, thank God this doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And so of course so the exact recommendation in that case was like, hey, let's think about who else has a lamp. I think there might be some other categories of people that are in like capable of talking through this. And then it's like, interior design is a huge topic. Maybe we can start there. Maybe even architecture. People who are into like anything highlighting, similar to Ruggable. Really, probably any kind of customer in that same category could rock and roll. I mean, um, yeah. So really funny and well stated approach to overcoming it. We have one. Anything else you want to say on testing adjacent niches or anything like that, or should we move to our kind of last catch-all question here?
No, I think that was it. I hope I never run into anybody who demands more lamp influencers, but we'll see.
I hope so too. Yeah, but it's I'm sometimes shocked. I think like often what happens, maybe the problem on one side is like people start, oh, we need to do more on TikTok, but they've never opened TikTok. Like they
Oh,
just have
sure.
no context for what's happening there, and then that lack of empathy for the creator, for the platform, for the audience, and how all that relates to your brand, I think can create a lot of big gaps in
Yeah.
people's kind of ability to execute on this. So,
It's
um,
actually kind of good for you, as a platform to be like, okay, so I really know where these people stand. Like they have no idea what they're talking about. So this either isn't going to work out, or we have to convince them that we're starting from ground zero here.
yeah, and that's why we do this show here too. It's like I think there's still a lot of room for. There's still no great assets for people to go and learn these kind of ideas that to you and I are kind of uh, maybe obvious, for lack of better phrasing. I think that it's cool to be able to have these. So thanks again for being here. Your last question, I hope a fun one. Thank you so much for all the time. Low hanging fruit. You step into an influencer marketing team. They've been spending money. They've been delivering. They got a small team. They're kind of happy with how things are going, but they're not blown away. What are the low hanging fruit? What are you looking for to really immediately pull a lever and suddenly they're just printing cash?
I would I would never claim
Easy
to know
question.
the answer to that. Um, but in some of my consulting work, I look at the internal operations and the internal workflows. Like, how is the team structured? Does it make the most sense to do that? How is the team? What are the handoffs and like communication protocols between team members or with the influencers, agents, and managers? Um, what does the outreach look like? What are you saying there? What are you focusing on? Are you only talking about you, or are you also saying that like you like their content too? These things that when you break down the best version of partnerships becomes a lot less about you forcing it to work and more about it happening organically. And so I
Mm.
think like as far as low hanging fruit goes, I look at do they have because like we've talked about team structure and we've talked about processes quite a bit, so I can kind of leave that off. But I think do you have the tools necessary to get the job done? So like if you're running, there's surprisingly a lot of companies that are trying to do things without a platform and like using Google Sheets and like I've used platforms and I still use Google Sheets alongside them because I think it's just maybe it's because I'm old, but like I just like to be able to quickly
It's a
sort
great
and
product.
filter and whatever. Yeah, like and so there is I understanding the lift of search and discovery, outreach and negotiation, execution, and then reporting and analysis of any given influencer collaboration, and then program at large. You need a tool to streamline all of those elements. And so that's a low hanging fruit. Like, what tool are you using? Is it the best for your team and your program? Um, that would
Absolutely.
probably
And
be
I
the most
think, is
immediate
it
one.
properly implemented is probably a really important question here, too. We see a lot of people who are kind of, they're half using the tool they pay for, or they're not using it at all, but they're paying for it. Or we see all kinds of combinations of this. They're paying for four things when they could be paying for one, and they'd be getting 10 times more out of that single software. Or they're trying too hard to work with a software when they should be in Google Sheets because that's what their workflow demands or whatever. That's a really common one with outreach that we see is people like, oh, we have to automate outreach. We're doing influencer marketing. Step one is to automate outreach and make sure we can send 10 million emails a day. And it's like, well, you could land your first 50 partners manually. Probably that would be like a good experience even to go through if you haven't done this before. And so, completely agree with you there. So the flow for you to identify low hanging fruit would be to look at the big picture, look at every individual chunk, and look for places where there's too much time investment, too much forcing. Was the word you used, which I really love, and see if there's a way to either smooth it over operationally or maybe optimize the tooling that you have to get it done. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, for sure.
Nice. Dmitri, it's been an honor and a privilege. I really appreciate your time again for the 800th time. We spent so much, dude. An hour and a half didn't feel that long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say is
Thank
like
you
I
kindly.
could talk about this ad nauseum all day long. Like it's just it's fun. So
Oh, be careful
I
what you wish for.
appreciate it.
Nice. Yeah, and some great stuff here. I really think it was a great episode. I think people will like it. Anything you want to plug? Anything you want to say? Any closing remarks?
um I'm currently available for hire, both as a consultant and in full-time capacity. So if you enjoyed this, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Um, and I am working on a couple other projects that should be unveiled relatively soon, but very excited about and excited for the future of the industry. You know, I think that there's been some really interesting things that have happened. We kind of talked about some of the attribution issues. But as a whole, I think if you're, again, looking at influencer as a holistic channel, not in a silo and not with like this little, like, what's our influencer program doing? But like how it's impacting the rest of marketing more broadly, then um, there's a lot of hope and a lot of excitement for the program, and creators are continuing to be really creative, but like really inventive. Like I see new formats all the time, especially on TikTok. So yeah, very excited, and thank you for having me and all of it.
Nice. Thanks, man. I love the notion of influencer marketing as the tip of the spear. Totally agree with that. So closing remarks, as a wise man once said, the harder you work, the luckier you get. So with that, farewell. Have a lovely day. Check out another episode. I doubt anyone has made it all the way to this last second of the last minute, but peace out if you're here.